You ever hear folks say that the South don't forget? They're right. The land remembers, and it passes that memory on to whoever's unlucky enough to inherit it. I didn't believe that until I went back to Grant's place in the summer of '98, down in rural Alabama, where the blackberry brambles grow like veins across the clay. I hadn't set foot there since I was 13, and at 29, I thought the memories would feel smaller, like how childhood streets shrink when you revisit them as an adult. But Grant's place hadn't shrunk. If anything, it seemed bigger, heavier. The house sat crooked on its foundations, deep in a clearing surrounded by pine and oak that leaned in too close, as if they were trying to smother the property. It was old even when Gran was a little girl. Wooden planks swollen from humidity, screened porch sagging with rusted nails, air that smelt like dust, mildew, and honeysuckle. Everything dripped, everything clung. My mother never liked us visiting. She said the place was too heavy with old sins. That phrase stuck with me as a kid. At the time, I thought she just meant the house was falling apart and filled with bad memories. But as I got older, I realized she meant something else. She meant the land itself carried guilt. Gran died in late spring of '98. When the phone call came, Mom said she wouldn't be going back. She made me promise not to stay long. Go, box things up, do what needs doing, but don't linger. She said it with a sharpness that left no room for questions. So I drove down alone. The first day, I wandered through the house, peeling back dust sheets that clung like ghosts. The wallpaper peeled in curling strips, revealing older patterns beneath. Layer after layer of vines, florals, twisted vegetation. Gran must have papered over the same walls half a dozen times, yet the motif never changed. Roots and leaves, always roots and leaves. The air inside was thick and stale. I opened every window I could, though most frames swelled too tight to bulge. In the kitchen, jars lined the shelves, pickled beans, tomatoes, and dozens of blackberry preserves, their lids clouded with dust. Gran had been canning until the end. That night, I slept in her old bed. The sheets smelled faintly of cedar and something sweeter, something cloying as I couldn't place. I dreamed of running barefoot as a boy, bramble thorns snagging my legs, juice staining my fingers. In the dream, Gran's voice whispered from the thickets, low and rhythmic, like prayer. On the second day, I went to the shed. It leaned as though it might collapse, its boards warped and the padlock rusted but still hanging loose. I pried it open with a crowbar. The smell inside was earthier than the house, damp and sweet sour like rotting fruit. Tools lined the walls, all old. Scythes, spades, clippers, a grinding wheel. In the far corner, a wooden box had crumpled into a pile. I bent to lift a board and it slipped, jagged nails catching me across the palm. The cut was sudden and deep. Blood poured quick, hot, and thick. My first thought wasn't hospital. My first thought was the blackberry brambles along the fence. Gran always said blackberry juice could stop bleeding. When I was a boy, she used to crush the berries, thick and purple-black, staining everything they touched, and press them into scratches and scrapes. The land heals you if you let it, she'd whisper, and it always seemed to work. So I stumbled out to the fence, pressing my shaking hand into the thorns, and crushed a fistful of berries until juice ran stickily down my wrist, mixing with blood until I couldn't tell one from the other. The sting was sharp, but the bleeding slowed. I wrapped my hand with a rag and told myself it was just an old folk remedy. That night, I unwrapped the rag. The wound had clotted, but inside the cut, I swear there were seeds. Little hard nodules, black and slick, embedded in the raw flesh. At first I thought they just stuck there from the juice, but when I tried to squeeze them out, My hand spasmed so violently I dropped the tweezers. The seed sank deeper. By morning, the cut had sealed shut, not scabbed, not stitched, just closed, smooth as healed skin. But under the surface, I could see them. Tiny bulges, like something growing. Over the next week, the house grew unbearable. Every night, cicadas screamed like the earth itself was being split open. The blackberry brambles crept closer as though they'd grown several feet overnight. Their thorns scraped against the siding, tapping in the dark like fingernails. The smell of ripe fruit hung heavy, almost rancid, so sweet it made me gag. My hand itched, not on the skin, but deep beneath it. When I pressed my palm against the bathroom mirror, the bulges shifted. Roots, thin and fibrous, stretched up my wrist. I could feel them tightening inside me, curling through veins. I searched the house for answers. In the bottom drawer of Gran's nightstand, under rosary beads and wilted funeral cards, I found her journals. Mom had told me not to read them, but I was desperate. The handwriting was fevered, uneven, pages filled with talk of feeding the land, of giving blood so the roots may bear. One passage burned itself into my mind. The wound is a gate. You must plant yourself so the field remembers. Let the blackberries drink, and you'll never be forgotten. I slammed the journal shut, but the words stayed with me. That night, I dreamt of being a boy again. I was in Gran's kitchen, kneeling on the linoleum while she pressed mashed berries into my scraped knees. Only this time, her hands were thorned. The berries pulsed like beating hearts, and when I looked down, my cuts weren't closing. They were blooming. I woke drenched in sweat with a mouthful of grit. When I spat into my hand, it wasn't grit at all. It was seeds. On the third night, I woke to the sound of chewing. Not rats, not insects. Wet, deliberate chewing. I followed it, half dreaming, out onto the porch. The blackberry brambles were moving. Not swaying, not bending with the wind, but moving, like snakes twisting in the moonlight. The berries weren't fruit anymore. They pulsed, glossy and slick, like clusters of swollen eyes. The chewing wasn't coming from the thickets. It was coming from me. I looked down. My left hand had split open along the old wound. Not bleeding, blooming. Blackberry stems jutted out of my palm, tearing skin as they sprouted. Leaves unfurled between my fingers. Fruit swelled where knuckles should be. And my mouth, God, my mouth was full. Seeds grinding between my teeth. My tongue thick with pulp. I was chewing, swallowing, choking down blackberries that weren't there. My throat ached with the roots pushing up, winding tight. I tried to scream, but what came out was a wet burst of purple juice. That's when I understood. Gran hadn't been healing me all those summers ago. She'd been planting me. Every time she pressed those berries into my cuts and scrapes, she was seeding the ground that would claim me later. This wasn't an infection. It was an inheritance. By the 5th day, I could barely keep food down. Everything tasted of berries, metallic and sweet, thick on my tongue. My fingernails cracked as green tips pressed through the beds. My reflection looked less like me, more like something the woods might claim. I tried to leave, packed the car, turned the key, dead. I swear I'd filled the tank, but the engine only coughed as it choked. I started down the road on foot, but after an hour the trees hadn't changed. Same sagging fences, same clay ditches buzzing with flies. When I circled back, the house was waiting, brambles hugging its sides like an embrace. That night, the journals called to me again. I read until dawn, words crawling across the page like vines. The land remembers what it's fed. Those who leave are unripe. Fruit must return to the bramble. By the 7th day, I didn't dream anymore. Or maybe I never woke. The brambles whisper at night. They scrape the walls, hungry. They want me among them. My hand is no longer a hand. It is a stalk, heavy with fruit. My skin splits along my arms in purple seams, each one sprouting. When I breathe, it's thick with pollen. I know now that I am not dying. I am being rooted. The house will not be cleaned out. It will not be sold. It will remain, wrapped in vines, fat with fruit that carries pieces of me. If you ever find yourself in the old back roads near Gadsden, and you see a blackberry thicket strangling an abandoned farmhouse, don't linger. Don't touch the fruit, no matter how ripe and sweet it looks, because the South does not forget. And once it's got a taste of your blood, it'll plant you too.